Well, hello, everyone. Um, Thank you for joining us today for our grant masterclass session. This is session one of the number of workshops happening over the next coming weeks. Really glad that everyone's been able to join us. My name is Rod Howells. I am a business consultant who's been working in the world of grant applications, business development, and innovation for over 20 years. I've applied for grants myself, I've applied for funding myself, and I have also now worked very closely on Innovate UK programs, helping people who have grants to develop those. With me today is Justin Davis, who's on the call. You might be able to see him there from Net Zero Industry Wales. And I don't know, Justin, just give yourself a just introduce yourself, please, to everyone on the call.
Yeah, thanks, Rod. Good morning, everyone. So my name's Justin Davis. I'm the Research and Projects Manager at Net Zero Industry Wales. We've been working with Rod to set up this series of masterclasses. So we are managing the Launchpad Fund through Innovate UK, which is funding for SMEs in Southwest Wales, working in the net zero space. One of the kind of overarching goals is to help SMEs, particularly in Wales, to unlock funding, be it Innovate or otherwise. So we wanted to set up this masterclass series around kind of the full scope from choosing funds to apply for all the way through to what do you do after your project's finished. So just my before I started with Net Zero Industry Wales, I have about 5-10 years experience working in the charity sector, as well as working for SMEs or in startups in the in innovative kind of sustainability industries. Very familiar with the kind of grant landscape and some of the pros and cons and trials and tribulations of securing funding, particularly from SMEs for SMEs. So yeah, thanks, Ron.
Yeah, great, thanks. So the structure of the session will be a talk for about 30 minutes, going through some of our thoughts on approaching the topic, and then we'll have an open sort of Q&A session using the chat function. So as we go through the slides today, if anyone's got any questions, any comments that they'd like to add to the discussion, please feel free to drop them straight into the chat, and we'll pick those up as we go and at the end of the session. So no questions a silly question. Please do ask, and we hope that for everyone we get some value from that. Okay, so I'll begin. As I said, this is the start of a session for programs. Today we're really concentrating on that finding of grants, looking for grants, prepare and getting yourself in a good position to put a strong application together. Where we'll go with the program will be next week we'll be looking at grant writing tips, how to put together a really compelling case for your grant. I often see ones where people have a really good idea, but they don't express it well enough sometimes. So that's what that session will be about. Then we'll be looking about managing that project through in the third session, and in the final session we'll be looking about follow-on funding, follow-on commercialization activity. So today's session very much is getting things in place, finding grants for the first, being ready to then put a application together. So if you haven't signed up for our follow-on ones, please do look at that. We'll be sending those out. Yeah, and across the series, really what you're getting is a really good understanding of the sort of grand landscape and what opportunities are around, how to develop a really effective application, one of the hardest things I think for people who have grants is actually collaborative projects where you've got multiple players being part of that. We'll be looking a bit about how to manage the IP and those partnerships as you're doing it. Ultimately, managing a project is about risk and financial management to make sure that you can achieve what you want to do, as well as the technical development. And then we'll be looking about, well, ultimately we want to make something out of this project. So how do we make sure we get the best out of a project so that it's not just completed with a grant and things stop? How do we make it a reality at the end of the day, which is what we all want? So let's get into it. First off, we'll be looking at why grants. We'll be looking at that area of which funds might be the right ones to go for and where to put your energies, and then how to have all the right information in place to put yourself in a good position to start that process. Right, so let's begin. So first things first, you've got to think about at what stage of the innovation journey are you at? Are you at the very beginning stage? Are you looking at developing a concept? Have you done some initial proof of concept work? Are you wanting to scale this? Are you wanting wider adoption? Is it actually that you've got a completed product and you're now just trying to get it to market and grow those sales? Where are you on that journey of developing your product? And this really may make you decide whether you're right, ready, or past the moment where grants are appropriate, because you will need to align what type of grant, what is the aim of the grant, why is this money being given out from a grant point of view, with where your business is at. So some grants are absolutely there for proof of concept work. No, this hasn't been done before, to de-risk that. If that's where you are, perfect. Others could be for more adoption, for scaling up. So really be aware of what your aim is and what stage you're at when you're looking and aligning the types of grants that are there. Grants don't tend to be there to help business sales. They're not there to do development. That's further on down the line. It's not for business development activity. It'll be for an innovation challenge. So there's usually an inherent risk that the grants are being put in place to fill a gap for. So first off, think about where are you on that journey, and what are you wanting the funds for? Why do you need the money? Obviously, that's fundamentally comes across in most grant applications. Why do I need these funds? I'd be also saying, what do I need them for? Because you'll be asked that question. Excuse me, there's a typo there. What are the ways? So what I mean by this bit is, what ways are would the funds work? What could you use the funds for? And it could be, what types of funds have you got available to you? So is it that you're looking for funds that could be used from yourself? I mean, are you going to be using your own funds? Are you going to be looking to at other types of funding? So what I mean by that is, have you looked at equity? Have you looked at loans? Is it other formats of funds that you need over and above the grant funds? And those have pros and cons to them, and also have areas of whether can have limitations to them. Obviously, if you've got equity, you're giving away some part of your business. If you're looking at loans, you're going to have to be repaying those. So there's a lot of advantages to grants where there can be, because of the risk factor, you can get that money as long as you're delivering the product and the project. You can be funded without it diluting your other funds. So thinking about the journey, thinking about what type of funds you might need, thinking about the size of the funds you might need. Is it that you need funds to get that proof of concept done? So is it that you need funds for the scalability, and what amount of it you want would be the things to be considering? And I'm thinking about who could you speak to. So you need to be thinking about Innovate UK. There's a great team of advisors who can support there, particularly for SMEs. You can get access to those by speaking through the Net Zero Industry Wales. You can also be speaking in Wales if you're within the Welsh ecosystem. Business Wales, a great team of advisors there who can help support and decide whether grant funding is available for you, would be right for you, and equally could point you in the direction of what types of funds are available. So considering the types of funds, considering what you're wanting to do, to think about that grant funding. Okay, let's start thinking about the pros and cons really of grant funds. The challenges first really with grants I'm going to concentrate on is that they can be actually quite difficult to locate. There's lots and lots of different grant funds available out there, and I will go into more detail on where you can find these funds, but finding the right one for the right time can be a challenge. They are rarely 100% funding. There's usually match funding required, so you will need to have that piece of funding in place to help take those funding forward. Often that is the case further on in the innovation journey. There's usually more requirement for match funding to be needed. They often don't cover all costs. There'll be certain costs that they are designed for. They won't be there to cover all the running costs of your business. They'll be usually designed to be specifically around a certain activity. I think one which is always can be a challenge, particularly for a new startup business, is that they can be paid in installments and in arrears. Understandably, because they want to see activities completed before money gets drawn down. But that can have a real cash flow implication if you need to be buying expensive pieces of equipment, stocks, materials, pay people linked to that grant. So you do have to be careful with your cash flow when you're looking at considerably larger projects and the impact that can have on your business really. And so you may have to look at other access to funds, whether it's some sort of overdraft, some sort of loan facility to help bridge those costs sometimes. So you do have to be very aware of that. And often that is the case where you are looking at a project which could run over in time, just run over in if there's delays. What are the implications if those costs are done often things can be done in, say, quarterly claims. Where are your key costs and what would be the most exposure that you would have over that length of that project? They can be very competitive as well, the application process. You could have a really good idea, and we see this an awful lot, where there's very good ideas being put forward for grant funding, but just the sheer number of people applying for a grant can cause mean that you aren't successful. So you can put a lot of time in and not get somewhere, even when you've done a good application. So it's not guaranteed that you will get that funding. The next thing is that they can be, I'm calling it distracting, in that you may be running your other bits of business. You may be finding that if it's not directly aligned with the outcomes of what you need to do, there can be a lot of time taken up on specifically on that project and managing those grants, especially if you're looking at ones which need an awful lot of work to apply for, and the gain that you may get from them, maybe the financial gain may be less. So you've got to be quite selective on which ones you go for. And once you've got them, they can be quite challenging on the amount of paperwork that you do. Justin, I don't know if you've got some thoughts yourself on some of the challenges, first off, of going for grants.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my personal experience, it's really like you really need to consider. I think the arrears payments was always a challenge in previous organizations I worked with. So
Yeah,
that if that needs to be kind of in place and ready to go along with the application about how you're going to manage that, whether that's making sure that you have a kind of cash reserve on hand to manage that, or have secured like a bridging loan in principle, or whatever sort of other kind of finances you need. Because I know that, yeah, so when your kind of cash runs for kind of 4 to 6 months or something as an SME, it can be quite impactful, like Rob was saying, to your cash flow, to get those arrears payments. So it's something to really consider as early on as possible, and start as you identify the grant that you need, or that fits you the best. It's making sure that you have those mechanisms in place as early on, almost while you're applying for the grant itself.
yeah,
And I think if you have that mechanism in place, even if the grant is unsuccessful, it would be easier to you'll have it in place for kind of further grants you apply for as well, even if the first application is unsuccessful. I think the other consideration is really to think about the time constraints of administering the grant. So yeah, once again, particularly with a small organization, a startup with limited kind of personnel resource, it's really important to consider how are you going to block out the time required to administer the grant, because there's going to be, if you're successful, there's going to be a lot of reporting requirements. There's going to be kind of check-ins required, the claims themselves, which kind of don't seem like they would take a lot of time, but they actually do end up taking up quite a bit of time. So yeah, it's just really important to consider that time aspect of administering the grant and who's going to do what. So you're not kind of finishing your normal working day and then spending another kind of 3 hours afterwards administering the grant as well. And it can definitely be managed, but it's just something that needs to be considered as you're looking at your finances and things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so we started with a relatively sort of dark picture here on the challenges of it. There is actually a hell of a lot of great benefits for the grant, going for grants, and I've seen a lot of success really for businesses as grants as a starter for their businesses. The good things about it, grant funding often will accept a much higher risk level than your sort of commercial organizations, sort of funding organizations, your banks, for example. As I was saying before, it doesn't dilute ownership. So there's of your business, there's not a requirement for you to sort of share any of the ownership of the IP or the company that you create around that. So it's seen as a sort of zero cost. There's not usually a charge there isn't a charge to the monies that's brought down. The bit I actually think is probably one of the biggest pros is the credibility that it often brings to organizations, to new ideas. Once ideas have been, Justin and I were talking about this before, once a company has had been accepted won a grant, it often builds a great credibility and can be used as leverage, not just financially, but equally for sort of reputation for that idea, and it can really be the thing that kickstarts a project, which was fundamentally what it's about.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that as well. So yeah, I'm not trying to present a doom and gloom picture, because it's just things to it's just important things to consider before applying, and to, I guess, just kind of have all of your ducks in a row. Because at previous companies I was with, I mean, there were things that there were projects funded through some of the grants that we received that kind of standard investors wouldn't go anywhere near, due to the kind of innovative aspect of them and the kind of risk involved. So we were able to get projects kind of up and running and started, like I said, that investors wouldn't go near. And then you also see that as your, like, the first kind of not high level, the first kind of larger pot of funding that you receive is a real kind of, it's a booster, I guess, to your organization's kind of CV, for lack of a better word. So once you get that kind of first big pot and put that effort in and are all planned, then either grant funders or investors will say, okay, well this funder was willing to take a risk, so it's maybe we're willing to kind of even if on paper it feels like there's a bit of risk for us as an investor, we're willing to kind of take that risk because other people have funded it as well, and it's been managed well, and the project was successful. And I mean, with the kind of administration, for example, you can use some of the reporting requirements that you have in order to kind of show the success of the project to potential other funders as well, and kind of move things forward. So there's a definite, I mean, there's a massive benefit as well. It's just making sure that that some of the kind of that some of these things are considered that aren't necessarily. I know personally, we didn't always consider, say, the arrears payments or the kind of time spent administering. So it's just making sure that that's considered. Really,
it's really common. You see the headline of it, but seeing the detail of how things are paid is really important. And equally, as I was saying, they're risky projects, so things can delay. So the profile of when payments come through, when you're cash rich, cash poor, it can be really a challenge. So you do that modelling work beforehand to see, can we afford this and can we do this? I think's the big takeaway message for me, which will allow you to get all of those benefits, really. Moving on, I just wanted to sort of, from my experience, I'm sure Justin's got the same here, just as real typical how that sort of plays out. What you really find on a funding journey for organisations is people start with a bit of their own money. I'm sure many people are familiar with this, their own personal funds, gets their proof of concept, gets their first hard yards sort of done. It's those smaller grants can really start being very valuable at that beginning stage. And an early grant can also help lead on to future grants. You often see that the work that's been done earlier can then put you in a good position to go for a larger grant, which then allows you to go for an even larger grant. This is often the sort of format I see that businesses have been successful. The amounts I'm using here are sort of not indicative, it's just to sort of be illustrative of it. And it's when you're getting to these stages where angel investors, early stage investment starts to be attracted, and that's where the leverage can come. So grants can be a real benefit through those stages. And when you're planning your grant strategy, thinking in those sort of terms really helps. And it's then when you're getting to your first sales, you're getting your sort of traction, you're starting to build some credibility, that's when maybe loans or VC investment starts to flow. So it's a real great bridge into those sorts of bits. Okay, I'm moving through. So the next bit I'm going to just talk about is where can we find them? Where are these grants? Again, for everyone on the call, I'm sure we've got different levels of experience and knowledge in this area. There's an awful lot of grants around. It's finding the right ones for you. You can find them regionally. We're quite blessed, I think, in Wales with having the sort of opportunities that the devolved governments allow us to have. We also have had the Shared Prosperity Fund and the work that's coming from local authorities at the moment. The Launchpad ourselves have had funding through Innovate UK to allow for very focused regional development. And what these funds allow is an area where it's directed into a very sort of specific region. You're not competing on a national level or a European level. So the actual number of people who are going for those may be less. So they're still competitive, but they may not be as highly competitive as we find with some of the national grants. And they can be very specific. So you can be looking at very specific challenges, which then allow for a really good alignment with maybe what you're doing. Nationally, we're looking at this from a Innovate UK, and that's where we start. But there's also lots of funding across nationally from different government departments, Departments of Trade and Industry. You've got also areas like the Royal Academy for Engineering. You've got Nesta. It's worth looking at across all of those areas for it. And I'm going to go on to explain some of the ways that you can find some of those grants shortly. Through to the European grants, even though we're outside of the EU now, we are still part of Horizon Europe. There are still opportunities for UK companies to work with Europe, so that is worth looking at. Again, quite competitive, and another level of sort of I was going to say bureaucracy, but it's really about the paperwork and delivery that has to be aligned. So you've got to be very, very specialist on those sorts of areas. I think an area that's really interesting for lots of SMEs is looking at sector-specific funds. Is there ones for your particular industry, your particular area of interest that would be something to look at from charities, third sector? How can they align? And again, there's a world of grants there that are worth exploring and promoting. Sorry for those sort of complexity on this slide. We will be sending the slides out after with some further notes. Here's just a couple of places which I find very useful, particularly for SME grants, and this is with an Innovate focus. The first one I've got at the top is UKRI. That's mainly university-linked grants, but that will include spin-outs and knowledge transfer projects. You do have then the ones which I would sort of focus on. You've got the Business Connect site, which is aimed at businesses, and those are for collaborative work. And then you've got the Innovate grants, which come through from the Innovate funding service. That's a really useful one to see what's available too. So it's worth looking at those. There's also subscription sites, which give a really broad range across local authorities, specific sectors, which may be something of interest for you if you want to sort of be paid for that. You can collect a lot of this info yourself by, I would suggest, hunting them out for your local area, look at your local authority, look at your sort of combined authorities, maybe something in this area, the Swansea City deal, Cardiff Capital Region, understanding what's available in those areas, look at signing up to the Launchpad. And most of them have newsletters and promotions which are worth signing up to. This is the Business Connect newsletter. That will mean that you'll get some of these what's coming up through to your inbox, rather than going out looking for them all the time. I think that's very, very useful. The other bit of advice I would have is connecting with people like the Innovate UK Business Growth team or Business Wales, or any other advisor teams that you're aware of, because they often, I know the teams I'm involved with, will see a lot of the sort of grant so that come out, and will push them out to people that they know is interested. So do make people aware of what you're looking for, because it's amazing when you've got extra pairs of eyes looking for you who will send you information. It's happened to myself where others have identified it, thought they might be interested in it, and it's been really worthwhile. So do that tactic as well, because it does help. So newsletters, sign up, subscriptions, let people know what you're after. Okay, so that was why grants. Then looking at what types of grants are available. It's such a big topic on all the different grants, and they'd be very specific on different businesses, but we've got that. What I'm going on to now is preparing yourself. This isn't a grant application. This is what you will need for grant applications. I'm not sure how many, I'm sure people on the call are familiar with the business model canvas. It's a very useful tool. I think this is actually a great place to start when you're thinking about structuring your communicating what your challenge is, because that will be fundamentally what will be needed in pretty much every grant application. You'll be writing a grant application where you will be answering these questions. What's the problem you're trying to solve? Number one, who's that customer market? Who's it for? What is your solution? Number three, why is your solution the one to solve this problem? For why is yours giving it the value to that market over other solutions? Why is it unique? Why are you the team that could do it? You'll often be asked about why your team is in the position to do it. Number six, what resources will you need? What is it that you need to do it? Number seven, why you're moving things on from the state of the art. Where is it? What's the state of the art at the moment? What's the current state of play, and why is yours better? What are the gaps? Number eight, how you're going to overcome those, what the grant's going to be used, and where's the novelty? Why is yours a unique new solution? These are often the questions that you're asked when you're looking at. So problem, need, why you're unique, why is it better than what else is there, what needs to be solved, often what's needed. So do think about using the business model canvas as a starting point. The code there takes you to the site to help look into that format. It's pretty much a project on a page. You'll note down these areas, and it's a starter for when you're getting to your grant applications. Okay, moving on. Okay, so that was sort of getting the information together for a grant, or starting to anyway. Another key part of grants often is that you may need to work with partners for this. There's often several numerous grants which are for collaborative working, and you need to understand and articulate why you would need a partner with that. Well, the first thing I would look at is, what is the relationship with the other people that you'll be working with to deliver the project? Is it that there is a partnership and that you will both be developing and elements of the innovation together, and that will be going on? Or is it that you are asking someone to do a piece of that work for you to take it forward? So are you subcontracting that work? It's worth understanding that what that relationship is in the program, often because that's how it is broken down uh, in a bid application and how people get paid. Partnerships can maybe have more out of the cost structure of how you actually claim your grant can be impacted by whether someone is specified as a partner or a subcontractor. So it's worth understanding how you're going to define that in the relationship. You've got to make sure you say it's the obvious, really, the right partners for your innovation journeys. What I mean by that is, they may be able to do the piece of work now. Are they the ones who you will need in the future stages that go on? So think about where this development will be going as they take this forward. You find that the calls for collaborative bids come out very quickly. So often they can come out in a shorter time scale than you have to build those relationships cold. So it is worth looking at building and finding the partners you will like to go to look at calls for prior to the calls coming out. That you may say, well, I don't know what partners I will need for calls. You'll see that actually some calls get repeated, or there's certain themes appear. So building those partnerships and being able to adjust and adapt them once a call comes out is probably the best way to do it, rather than trying to do it from a cold start. And having those relationships can also lead on to other opportunities. So I would start looking at building relationships and partnerships earlier rather than later when you're looking at doing calls together. In that, I would clarify who's doing what, where the intellectual property will write, how will you share what's coming out of the innovations, who will be the will one person be the main owner of that intellectual property? Will you be sharing that intellectual property? How will you be working that? There are frameworks and agreements, templates that you can use to help some of that. You need to also look at things like the split of the finances shared, and in that can also be the risk. Who's taking which risks in the project. A good tool to pull that together is putting in a memorandum of understanding, which is a simple agreement to highlight who's doing what within a project and what the outcomes of that project will be and who will take those forwards. Justin, I'm going to drop you in at this point. I don't know if there's anything on collaborative partnerships you might like to add.
Yeah, I think from the point you made about making sure that you kind of have those partnerships in place early on is really crucial, and kind of knowing even before any like funding calls come out, knowing kind of that what businesses kind of around you might be worth collaborating with, I guess, in terms of any problems that you might have that want solving, or I guess it's just kind of general networking, isn't it? But I think in terms of the actual kind of funding side of things, a memorandum of understanding, or we tend to work off of collaboration agreements, which really kind of set out the kind of full scope, who's the lead partner, who are so essentially who's going to be managing the grant administration itself, or managing the overall project. yeah, what funding's available, what's your kind of IP, are there any kind of NDAs that need to be in place between you and your partners, and that's worked really well for some of the various projects that we've worked on, and really kind of fosters that collaboration, I guess, and really kind of puts it puts out up front at the very beginning kind of what's expected of each partner, so there's no kind of misunderstandings further down the line that could kind of delay or kind of hurt a project, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can see requests in the chat for links, so we'll try and get those together for where there's some templates. I was thinking about some of the Lambert agreements and things like that, which are between universities, etc., and partners. And there are some others which I'll find for you, which we can share. Great, thanks.
Sorry, just to answer Judy's question on the legal side as well. I mean, I guess it depends project to project. We tend to have something that's drafted by a solicitor, whether that's in-house or with one of the project partners or kind of external. But I think how far down the kind of legal agreement side you want to go would probably depend on how much kind of IP is involved, and how much like funding there is, and it's I think it probably depends project to project. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was sort of telling a general sort of finding a partner and working with them. Usually, you want to sort of, it's a little bit of a dance to start with, I suppose, isn't it? You get to know each other. Partly, you find out where you've got areas of interest. Then it gets to a point where you need to sign NDA, so you can be a bit more detailed on if it's provided sensitive info. I quite like doing the memorandum of understanding, which is not a formally legal document, but it allows you to figure out who's doing what and where, which then can pour into your collaboration agreement, which that starts to make that agreement become much more fixed. And yeah, as I say, there's sort of structures to those at the moment about how those developments can then be taken forward, so people are protected on both sides, or all sides, depending. So that's usually the steps into it that I would suggest. Yeah. Okay. Right. So moving on to the next part, I suppose the last point for me on this is really stick to where you're wanting to go. With your business plan. Don't get distracted by going for collaborative grants, or any grants really, if it isn't really ultimately aligned with the direction of the business. That's when it can be really distracting, and you can actually be spending a lot of time on things which is taking you away from your ultimate purpose. So do have that sort of guide towards that North Star of where you're wanting to go when you're looking at these things. Nearly finished the sort of the key points I wanted to sort of share here. We're getting to the point now where we've talked about the broad landscape. We've talked about starting to get your ideas of what you want from a preparation point of view, things that you will need to articulate. Talked about the partnerships piece. IFS portal, which is the Innovation Funding Service portal, that's the Innovate one. We'll be going into this in more detail next session, next week. There's lots of very good info there. In some ways, there's too much info to find your way around it. They do, one of the bits that's great is they say what assessors are after, which we'll be looking at. But at this stage, when you're looking at a grant and deciding if you're going for it, and this aligns for every grant, really read this. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but people sometimes read what they want to, or how you understand it really needs to be clear, and it's worth getting it dead straight in your mind at this point what the scope of the grant is, what the basically the essence of what they want to fund will be in that, so or they're looking to fund. So what's the scope, what's the eligibility, and what are the dates that fund has to be done in, because that will give you a very good idea of how well you'll be able to how well you could be able to put a bid in against those criteria. There's further detail often in the sort of guidance notes, and there'll be briefing events for lots of the grants. They're well worth attending, because that really brings some of those drier scoping docs to life, and you have an opportunity to ask questions. So do take a chance to go to those if you're looking at particularly Innovate UK grants. Often they're recorded, so if you've missed one, you can at least do the webinar of it. And as I say here, read them. Then after you've done that, read the scope again, read the eligibility again, check the dates again, that you think, yes, actually my project really aligns with what they're asking, before you start writing anything. If you're going on to the IFS site, these are the tabs you need to start looking at against the grants. Look at the eligibility tab. Number of times I've seen people try to put applications together and they're not actually eligible. The state of their business, whether it's aligned for their type. So do recheck that it aligns with that you're eligible for this grant. Check the scope, and if in doubt, ask to see if what you're looking at fits. Some of them can be quite wide ranging, and that can be on purpose. Some of them can be quite specific, but it's worth then exploring, and that's where going to the briefing sessions are worth going to. And the final bit I was going to talk about was just those dates. It may be the perfect grant for you, but does it fit your timescales? Can you do what is required in the time? First off, get the application together, but does the grant, the timescales of the grant, fit with the timescales that it will take to deliver the project that you've got in mind? Again, if it's tight, or if it's a year-long grant and you think your project's an 18-month project, can you adjust what scope you might do to make sure it fits? And being realistic, can you do it knowing that there'll be delays, planning permission, or supplier times for getting product or a piece of equipment developed? Just have to have that sense check before you launch into applications for this. You may be asked that also when it's being reviewed and in the grant application. So do make sure you've looked at those bits. Okay, other considerations, just to sort of finish off this part of the session. With all those things in mind, the extra paperwork, timescales, potential risks in the flow of a project, and the uncertainty, can you afford it? Can you really afford to take this grant on and commit to the work that it entails? Does it cover, because as I was saying before, it will cover project costs, but there may be other costs which the grant will not cover that you'll need to make sure you can afford. Can you protect what you're getting out of this? Will it help and advance it? So think about the IP position. Will it help protect your position? Does it align with where I want to go? Does it achieve something that I need for my my project to advance? If it's proof of concept, is it proving things that I would want to go on to the next step? So does it actually get something from this grant, or will I have a lot of activity which may distract me from my greater purpose? And that's what I mean. Does it help me move forward with my project? Is this grant that I'm looking at something that helps me in the direction I'm traveling, into a market I want to go, prove part of the technology I want to do? And you've just got to self-check yourself on those once you're looking at each of the grants that are available. So those are all the sort of considerations. Think about your grant strategy, which fit together. Think about where you could find grants for the types of things you're wanting. And it's worth thinking widely I think that, looking for specific sectors, looking regionally, speaking with your local authority, understanding what's available at the time, through to your Welsh government, UK government. There is a lot of grants out there, but which are the right ones for you? There's some great ones attached to accelerators, by the way, for early stage, where there's some initial fundings. Royal Academy of Engineering, for example, have had programs like that, and there's others which I see really help. So think wide for where you might find the grants. Consider whether it's helping you move forward, and think about what we'll look at next time is priority. What do you need to put into that application? So yeah, so just for everyone who's on the call, we're going to go to a Q&A in 2 secs. Next one will be into that grant writing piece, how to structure answers, how to really be impactful in what you're saying, and how to make a good project plan come together for that. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing at that point and just open up. Has that stopped sharing, guys?
Yeah, all good, Rod. I see 2 questions in the chat already. So Judy just asks, is there any tools/tips to get a data-informed way to answer? Specifically, does it align with where we want to go? Does it achieve something? Is it proving things that I would want to go on to the next step? Essentially measuring these things. I guess from my perspective, I mean, there's a couple of things. So one is, when you're looking at the grant, is really kind of look at your own business plan and your own KPIs that you have set, and then compare that against the scope of the actual competition. I mean, a lot of times if you're successful, for the grant itself, you'll develop, sorry, you'll have some KPIs that you've submitted to the grant, to the funder, but you can also develop those with the like kind of monitoring officer, whoever you're working with from the funding, so you can refine those a bit more. But I think it's, from my perspective, you're really going back to your own business plan and your own KPIs, and really thinking about, like I said, the scope of the competition, and seeing if that aligns with what you're trying to achieve personally, if that makes sense. Yeah, I
think you're right. Just make your own list of what you're wanting to achieve. It's be quite tailored to yourself, really, on what you think. Where do I want to go? How does it align with your own business plan? And can you justify the efforts in line with that? I'm just having a look.
Emma asked, is there a cap on how many grants you can apply for?
Well, what you find on Innovate, and it's usually set in the eligibility, will say if you can have, if you've got live applications or not. So sometimes it can specify that on Innovate ones. So if you've already got a running Innovate grant, so it can be tied quite to specific grants, but they'll usually say in it. So I'm thinking there was a grant for new innovators, and one of the precursors was that you haven't previously had a Innovate grant, for example. So there are others where you can only apply. If you're unsuccessful a number of times, then you can't reapply. It has to be materially different from the previous one. Obviously, if you're going for different grant awarding bodies, then they aren't linked. You can have grants from different bodies to do things. So you can have a portfolio, and I know many companies who've got different grants from different areas. You've just almost got to understand what you're requesting to do in that grant, or what you're planning to do with that grant. People don't really want to double fund the same some activity. There'll be a reason. Grants are usually for plugging a hole, so you could have complementary, or you could have parallel activities going on, but probably you'd want to be avoiding duplication, if that makes sense, or perceptions of duplication. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I hope everyone's found it useful. It's been quite a high level, because this high level sort of overview of what's required when looking and considering grants. I hope it gives you some steer. You do need to get the devil's obviously in the detail for a lot of grants, but I hope that some of the things we've talked about today will give you thoughts on what you need to think of as a business when you're preparing to look, when you're looking at a grant, and whether you should go for it or not. Next time we'll take this further into, okay, you've found a grant that you think's worth applying for. We'll give you hints and tips on how to make a really good application for that grant. So I hope you can sign up and join us next week, and we'll see you at the same time, same place. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.